Good morning, this is the Ecole Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 529 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Boom. Today, recording day is, well, hey, look at that. It's Friday, December 6th, 2024. And I think it's going to be a nice day here at the Beaver Lodge, although that's the most winteriest of days, cold-wise. We're not exactly double digits, but -9 right now. So don't know if we got there over the course of the night, but it's definitely feeling a little bit like winter over here, which is actually quite good for this time of the year because I actually do like winter. I'm one of those odd freaks. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Got a pretty good show for you today, good variety of topics. But before we go any further, Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health today, sir? Ooh.
The jury's out on that one. I got a lot on my plate today. I don't look at it this way. I don't hate myself and I don't feel terrible about myself. So I think that's a win. I'll put that in the win column. I'm overwhelmed a little bit this morning. I have a lot on my plate, a lot that needs to get done today. So that, increases one's anxiety to a degree, although I'm not freaking out. So, I think all things be considered, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we'll take that.
Yeah, it's a win. It's a win.
Okay. Good stuff. Me doing really well today, except I slept in 2 shifts last night. So my clock is completely all over the place. But right now, feeling groovy. So you got me at a good moment, kids and cubs. All right. Before we get started in earnest today, kids and cubs, there's a couple of little things to which we need to pay attention. First of all, there's a very special birthday here at the Beaver Lodge.
Oh.
Isn't there, Mr. Grizzly?
Yes, Mademoiselle Fox's birthday is today.
Woohoo!
She's sound asleep right now.
Happy
birthday today.
Yes, well, she's got a show tonight too. So, birthday celebration on Foxy Friday. So be sure you tune in for that. But
it is a pre-record, just to give you that. It's because she's having dinner with her son this evening.
That is true. Yes. Family first. Yes. Yeah, I'd forgotten it was a pre-record this week. But happy birthday, dear. You don't look a day over fabulous. Well, there you go. Also, not sure if you prepare a cake for this, but it is the second, for lack of a better term, anniversary of Kit Elaine's heart attack.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so here's a cupcake, and here you go, anniversary of the heart attack. Don't come back.
Well, and Kid Helene has not had a cigarette since that day either. So, yeah,
Oh,
yes,
yes.
yes.
So, congratulations. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a knock at the door
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make a compelling argument. But
Mhm.
hey, as we say, doesn't matter when you arrive, so long as you arrive. That applies to choosing yourself too.
Indeed.
So, congratulations, Elaine. Congratulations to you on choosing you. And yeah, actually, let's call it happy 2 years from recovery from the
Yes,
heart attack anniversary, because I know that you are doing your exercises rather assiduously, and we support that very much.
very
So
much
there you
so.
go.
Absolutely.
As well, um, today, um, Kit Hugh, I was talking to him yesterday, and he mentioned something a little interesting to me. Apparently, in a small portion of a place in Ontario, we have a little cult of teenagers who
Oh,
are following this, because it seems that uh, Mr. Kit Hugh uh, gets to class a little early and listens to us. And sometimes the kids are coming into the class as he is saying something out loud about something we're talking about.
right, right.
Sometimes colorfully.
Mm.
And it seems that it starts some discussions, and he's got a group of very, very, very sharp kids who like to discuss current affairs. And
Good.
it seems that they have somehow, in some way, found us. So,
Welcome to the party. And we all know you'll be of voting age soon. So, we're happy for you to join the fold of democracy.
yes, indeed. So, a big shout out to all the kits and cubs. Um, who will probably recognize themselves if I am, well, I hope you will recognize yourselves. So, a big hello and welcome to the Beaver Lodge. It is lovely to have you among us. All right.
You're the
Now,
future. Remember that.
yes, yes. See, whenever people say that, though, you have to understand, I'm a gay beaver. It's hard for me not to break out into a chorus of Whitney Houston right now. She calls to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She- so I got the
I've
crown
heard
right
that
back
song
here, you know.
too many times. Remember, I'm a DJ. You know how many times I've heard that song or the request for that song? And like, no, if I play that, it's going to clear the dance floor.
But I got the crown.
Uh,
I decided. No, okay, I'll spare you. I do believe the children are our future, but I also believe they are our present. So let's do stuff for them now too.
yes.
All right. So that's the fun stuff. Um, it's also another anniversary today, and I'm
A lot of
actually
anniversaries today, actually.
yes, and I'm actually surprised a little bit about this one. Not that I'm surprised it happened, because I heard about it a few days ago and I had made note of it to mention it today. But that in my politics brief that I get normally, there is absolutely no mention of this today, which I found rather interesting. But it is December 6th, which means that it is the anniversary, unfortunately, of a very tragic event that
Well,
happened here in Canada 35
yeah,
years ago.
yes, and we'll get to that in a sec. I also wanted to say it's also the anniversary of Pearl Harbor.
Oh, see, wasn't even aware of that either today. But yes, that's true. December 6th is the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
So Pearl Harbor, and then of course, as mentioned in the descriptor for the show, the 14 women who were gunned down at Ecole Polytechnique in Montreal, simply because they were women. Because a very angry young man, who would we describe today as an incel, I guess, perhaps, who stormed in, armed to the teeth, hating feminists and women and blaming feminists and women for all of the ills in his life, which means the guy had severe mental health issues, obviously untreated because it was 1989, and we didn't talk about such things then. So today we're going to talk about the 14 women who were murdered for being women and nothing more. And that is something that has been going on for centuries. But that was the first time something like this happened in this country. And it still stings today. I remember it vividly. I was at work when it took place, and the breaking news. I mean, CBC News World was pretty new at the time. It was breaking, but News World wasn't readily available everywhere at the time because it was a cable channel.
Mhm.
So they broke away to the regular network to broadcast live what was taking place. It was all over the radio. It was all over print. It was everywhere. Now, you have to understand, 1989, the internet didn't exist.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people had cell phones, and digital cameras did not exist. If you had a camera, it was probably a disposable one, or you were a photographer. So there's not a lot. There's zero visual evidence of what happened while it happened. I believe there was some videotapes, but they were kept under lock and key, and no one has ever seen them. So that's probably where they should stay.
Mhm.
I honestly think they should stay there
Mhm.
because nobody really needs to see that.
Exactly.
But it was a very different time. And again, as I said, this man had severe mental health issues, clearly severe mental health issues, untreated, because at the time we didn't do that. Only people, the only people we sent to see a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist at the time was somebody who was obviously going to be institutionalized. So the homeless population was very tiny at the time. You have to understand a lot of homeless people have mental health issues. I'm going in a big circle here, but bear with me. He was not homeless. He had a family. He had a loving parents. And they knew he was always sort of an inward child. I'm not defending him, by the way. I'm just explaining what took place. He was an inward child who had issues, possibly on a certain spectrum of something. I don't know. But he was very angry. And he took his anger out in the most visceral of ways and murdered 14 women who were studying engineering, just wanted to have a life and a career and maybe a family, I don't know. But they wanted to contribute to society in a better way, and they never got that opportunity because he ended their lives in cold blood before they ever had a chance to complete their studies. And to this day, I will always remember exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing when the news broke. And I can picture myself there right now. There was a lot of snow on the ground at the time in both Montreal and Ottawa. It was a time when it would snow in late November and it would stay until middle of April. Those days are gone, and that's only 35 years ago. I'll remember it like it was yesterday for the rest of my life. That would be our generations and Canadians, if you will, JFK moment. Because Americans of a certain age would say, where were you when JFK was shot? Well, that was the president. That was one man. This was 14 women. Femicide is, thank you, Ree. It was tragic. It was heart-wrenching. It was gut-wrenching. It was all of the things you can imagine. I have younger sisters, and sorry?
It's all right. Take the time you need.
Couldn't imagine if they were in that same position. So we need to remember this each and every year. The tragedy that it is, the pain and the suffering that it brought, but we need to remember it so we can keep it from repeating. Because history does repeat itself if we allow it to. So, if you see something, say something. Well, you got to do that. Femicide is a problem. It is an epidemic. And it's something that needs to be taken care of and dealt with and treated. But the Conservative Party of Canada doesn't seem to want to do that. They voted against it a few times. And they voted against women's right to choose again yesterday. They want to take away abortion rights from women.
Yeah.
So the day before the anniversary of the Montreal massacre, they're telling women, you don't matter. We don't care about you. You are meant to be controlled by us men. It's exactly what they're saying. They're just saying it with different words.
Mm. So in that presentation that you laid out for us so eloquently, Mr. Grizzly, there are 3 news stories that are attached to that are all related, that took place that are taking place. The first one is that for the first time, a 15th beam of light will illuminate the Montreal sky on Friday, because every year there's 14 beams of light that are shone up from Mount Royal. But the 15th beam of light will illuminate the Montreal sky on Friday in tribute to all the women lost to violence as the city commemorates the 35th anniversary of the Polytechnique shooting. The additional beam will join the 14 others in memory of the victims of the 1989 tragedy, where 14 women, 13 students, and 1 university employee were killed by a lone gunman. The ceremony, which begins just after 5 p.m. at Mount Royal's Candiac Lookout, will include speeches, a musical performance by harpist Evelyne Grégoire-Rousseau, and the laying of 14 roses in remembrance of the victims. A symbolic 15th rose will also be placed this year. CBC will live stream the ceremony online starting shortly after 5 p.m. Eastern Time for those who want to tune in. With that, on the day, there are always these profiles that come up, and we're going to read the names of the 14. Sonia Pelletier, Anne-Marie Edward, Anne-Marie Lemay, Annie St-Arneault, Annie Turcotte, Barbara Daigneault, Barbara Klucznik-Widajewicz, Genevieve Bergeron, Helene Colgan, Nathalie Croteau, Michele Richard, Maude Haviernick, Maryse Leclair, and Maryse Laganiere. Those are the 14 women that we take time to remember every year. And unfortunately, because femicide is an issue, we just mentioned it the other day because it was the International Day for the Prevention of intimate partner violence or violence against women, where we reported, according to a new UN report, the most dangerous place for a woman worldwide is in their own home.
Yeah. Worldwide.
To deal with that, the first thing that the Liberals did yesterday, and this is from Louis Blouin and Darren Major from CBC, and I didn't hear of this coming at all, so I don't know if it was just quietly being worked on, whether this was a thing that was happening with full public knowledge that had been announced. But the federal government announced yesterday new gun control measures, adding several hundred models and variants to its list of banned weapons. Quote, these firearms could no longer be legally used, sold, or imported in Canada, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc told reporters. The announcement comes one day before the 35th anniversary of the massacre at École Polytechnique de Montreal. Radio-Canada first reported the news earlier Thursday. The new measures, which are effective immediately, list more than 300 makes and models of what the government calls assault-style firearms as prohibited weapons. RCMP Deputy Commissioner Brian Larkin told reporters that the models that were assessed and added to the list fall under the government's 2020 definition of assault-style weapons. The Liberals previously banned 1,500 models under that definition. There will be an amnesty period until October 30th of next year for current owners to comply with the ban. The new models will be part of the government's planned buyback program. The buyback program still hasn't fully been launched, but Minister of Public Services Jean-Yves Duclos said Thursday that a pilot program that has been running for the past month has collected and destroyed a couple dozen guns. Defense Minister Bill Blair, and this is an interesting twist on it, said some of the guns the government plans to collect will be sent to Ukraine as part of Canada's ongoing donations of military aid to that country. Quote, the Department of National Defense will begin working with the Canadian companies that have weapons that Ukraine needs in order to get these weapons out of Canada and into the hands of the Ukrainians, he said. The government also will be implementing measures stemming from Bill C-21, the firearms bill that was adopted in 2023. The government had proposed a more stringent definition of assault-style firearms under that legislation, but dropped a number of amendments to the bill in February in response to the backlash. If you remember that, we reported on that, Kits and Cubs, that last year the federal government was introducing a gun bill that had the buy-in of everyone, and at the last minute they decided to add several more models to that bill, which caused a lot of people to not appreciate the move and caused us to wonder, what the hell? Because you were managing to get a gun bill through without the conservatives' minds melting.
Yes, and then
you went and
step,
and then you tried to make it better or whatever, or add some political messaging or whatever it was, but you destroyed it then. And at that point, there was a survivor from Polytechnique because the group, was really wanting this to go through, and they felt very disappointed that it wasn't. So I guess over the course of the year, they took some time to go through every one of the new models that they wanted to put on it, and then were able to separate those that actually did belong on the list versus, those that were just being thrown in on the list as a catch-all. And I guess this year, it has this one might have a better chance of passing. A government spokesperson speaking on background said that the new measures apply to some firearms that were included in those initial amendments, while others were left out. Some guns that were not included in the amendments have been included in the new measure, the spokesperson said. C-21 included provisions to make it easier to revoke licenses and take firearms from people who commit violent acts. Last week, women's groups and families of victims questioned the government about some of C-21's long-awaited measures and why they have not yet been implemented. A government spokesperson said those measures would come into effect in the new year. On December 6, 1989, and then it goes back historically, telling about the Polytechnique, and then to talk about that survivor that I was mentioning. Nathalie Provost, a survivor of the mass shooting and spokesperson for the advocacy group Police se souvient, said Thursday's announcement is, quote, an important step forward. Quote, those are just killing weapons, war weapons, military weapons. So I am so proud that today we are doing something, she said. Conservative public safety critic Raquel Daigneault, and thank you to the kid who sent me a note yesterday telling me how it was supposed to be properly pronounced, because I believe you live in her electoral district. Very helpful. Thank you. Denounced the new measures and accused Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government of going after lawful Canadians while being soft on criminals. So in other words, it's a day that ends in Y when we're talking about gun control.
Yeah.
Well, because that's their go-to line.
Let's address something here too. So Cassie made a point. She says the Liberals do little for stopping guns coming across the border. That's the biggest problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Which will be acted upon soon with the redistribution to police.
Fair point, but let's take a closer look at who's responsible for that. That's a combination of RCMP and CBSA. They don't get their marching orders from the federal government. So that has nothing to do with the Liberal Party of Canada or the Conservative Party of Canada. It has nothing to do with any party of Canada. That is under the auspices of both the RCMP and the CBSA. It's up to them to do the job. Period. That's what it is. It's their responsibility. They do not get their marching orders from the federal government. Just the same as any police association in the country does not get their marching orders from the government. They don't. They operate independently of one another. So by all means, point the finger of blame, but let's point it at the correct people. That's all. And it doesn't matter who's in power. It's not them who's doing it. So the only thing you could say is to any federal government in power is if they're not giving them the resources they need. If they say we need more resources to be doing this, then yes, we do. Yeah, no, I understand, Mr. Jim. Canada Border Services Agency is a federal agency, just like the RCMP is, but it's not run by the government. It's an independent body, even though it is federal. Just like the Department of National Defense is federal. It operates independently.
Or the National Parole Board.
Exactly. They all operate independently of one another. And they have to, though. They have to.
Yes, indeed. So Raquel Daigneault doing the typical thing. And of course, they always send out a woman to do this on this day. Quote, Trudeau's latest underhanded attack against lawful Canadians and his continued blind eye to the actual gun criminals is an insult to the thousands of victims of gun crime who continue to be terrorized and lose their lives as a result of Trudeau's catch and release policies. Daigneault, here it says said, but I will say lied in a media statement. Let's make this very clear. Gun control legislation does not seek to punish lawful gun owners.
No.
We are not concerned about lawful gun owners. In fact, I have personal experience knowing lawful gun owners and them having absolutely no issue whatsoever with taking on extra measures if it means people will be safe. Lawful gun owners are also safe gun owners.
Correct. And I know lots of them. And most of them that I know, I'd say the vast majority of them. I remember I was working one day and I was talking about a gun control bill, and this guy who was a big gun owner said, "What?" I said, "I'm not trying to take anything away from you." And he goes, "What?" I go, "No, you own your guns. You're legally entitled. You're legally allowed to because you've passed all checks and measures and you've taken all the courses and you're certified." And he goes, "Oh yeah." I go, "Well, I'm not trying to take that away.
Yeah.
I think if anything,
we want more people like you."
And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, okay." He goes, "I get up in arms because people want to take my guns." And I go, No. He goes, No, I'm a responsible gun owner. My guns are locked up. It's this. And if I'm going to the range, my route is planned out. The police know. And you have to do all of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't just get in your car with your gun and away you go. No, it needs to be locked in the trunk. It needs to be in a case. And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm for all of that."
Yeah. And it can be done because Switzerland has, I think everybody in Switzerland pretty much has one. I think
pretty much everybody over the age of
like that.
18 has one.
And there's almost no gun violence in that nation.
Almost none, comparatively speaking. They're a gun-loving nation. You got to remember, everybody over the age of 18 who is fit will serve in the Swiss Army, and they are issued an automatic weapon, and you keep it for life. And you take that automatic weapon home with you. And I remember being on the streets of Geneva, seeing a guy with long hair and piercings in fatigues on his bike with an automatic weapon strapped to his back. And that's a normal sight there, because after you've done your mandatory service, every few years you have to go back for like 8 weeks of retraining to make sure that you're fit. And your employer just, "Oh yeah, go ahead." It's not an issue. It's like, it's mandatory. And everybody sees it as service to the nation. It's not an issue. But once you're out of the military, when you go back to do your 4 weeks or 8 weeks, I can't remember what the stretch is, you don't have to cut your hair or anything. You do have to wear a uniform, and you have to observe all military aspects, rank, et cetera, but you are a civilian serving as almost like in the militia, if you will, like the Canadian militia we have here, where they call them weekend warriors. It's the same sort of idea, but it was, as a Canadian, to see somebody driving around on a 10-speed with an automatic weapon on their back, it's a little shocking to see at first, but in Switzerland, that's a normal sight, and people don't even think of it because everybody that owns a gun in that country is well trained because they've all had military training.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember the first time in my life, I was in France, and it wasn't like a citizen, it was an actual police officer of some kind of law enforcement officer had the big machine gun like this, and they were stopping people on the street and asking, like, "Do you have papers?" Because I got stopped because I'd showing my passport. It's like, that's the closest I've ever come to a weapon in my entire life, and I found that really weird because that just doesn't happen in Canada.
Yeah, and it just doesn't happen here. We take it for
Yeah.
granted.
But
I
there
mean,
were
you've
like
got
lots of
something like-
bombs and garbage cans stuff back then happening and stuff, right? So they were
Yeah.
patrolling.
You've got
But
the
still,
CCFR in Canada, which is the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights, which is hilarious because you do not have a right to a firearm in this country. You don't.
Mhm.
It's a privilege. It's not a right in this country. And I'd like to keep it that way. And, I know gun owners were like, well, I should have the right. And I go, settle down. Do you
there are
want to take
legitimate
away?
reasons to have one, and they are recognized in law
Exactly. Exactly. And
without having to declare it a right.
And I'd say about 95% of the folks that I know that are gun owners because they're hunters.
Mhm.
They go hunting. Well, actually, when I was in Calgary this past weekend, I had sent a message to Army Chris, and I said, if you're around, maybe we can get together for a beer. I don't know if you can come down to Calgary for a day or two. He goes, actually, I'm going out deer hunting because it's the end of the season, and I want to get a deer for the winter. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And he does that every year. He goes out and gets a deer or a moose, whichever he can get, whichever license he has. He does that every year. He goes there, and then there's my meat for the winter and into the spring because you can't eat a whole deer in a couple of months. So, yeah,
I love
Army
deer. I
Chris
just
goes
can't eat
deer
a full
hunting
one
every-
in one sitting.
Yeah, he goes deer hunting every year. And Army Chris has lots of weapons, but he is also a staunch supporter of the rules that are in place because he was at a party one night and a young woman said, I want to get a gun. He goes, hang on. Went, pulled a pistol, took the chamber out of the round, took the magazine out, and handed it to her. And she freaked out. And he goes, that's why you shouldn't have a gun. And took it back from her. He did it to prove a point. I want a gun for protection. He's like, okay, here's a gun. Exactly why you shouldn't have one. So many people in the United States of America that own guns, because anybody can just buy one, end up shooting themselves or a loved one by accident when somebody breaks in because they're not properly trained. Also, something like, I think I could have this number wrong if somebody wants to check it out to verify. The number of gun deaths in the United States by suicide is something like 60%, if not higher. That's something the NRA doesn't like to talk about.
And if we're talking about, because we have a mental health focus, particularly men's mental health focus, mostly it's men.
Mostly it's men. So bigger picture here. But let's come back to the women for a sec. On two things for a sec. I don't mean for a sec. Let's come back to the women and the Montreal massacre. And then we talked about how yesterday in the House of Commons, the Conservative Party of Canada voted against a woman's right to make a choice. Well, and I say this and people go, oh, you're being alarmist. You're being hyperbolic. You know, that won't happen here. It can't happen here. I'm like, yeah, it can happen here. What can happen here? Well, this. You see that picture on the left? That was women in Afghanistan in the 1970s. And the picture on the right, that's women in Afghanistan in 2018. See, because now they wouldn't be allowed to show their, let me just take us off the screen there so we can see this a little bit better. You see that they have bare skin on their feet because they're wearing heels. Well, they're not allowed to do that anymore. They can't show any flesh. Now they're not allowed to travel in groups. Now they're not allowed to speak to one another. Yeah. So they went from freedom, miniskirts, no hijab, working, being educated, teaching, living their lives the way they wanted to. On the left in the 1970s and on the right in 2018. Actually, that could have been in the 1990s for all I know. I don't have a date on that photo. 70s and how they feel when about it, you know, I don't have a date on that photo, but
I believe it is
what
70s.
It went from. Pardon?
I believe it is
the one on the right.
Oh, the one on the right, yeah.
Yeah, left is the 70s, right.
The one on the right could be today.
Well, no, it wouldn't be today because they have flesh showing on their feet, and that's not allowed in Afghanistan right now. They can't show any flesh, and they can't travel together. Okay.
Yes, that's true. Yes, they can't. The woman's voice has to be
silenced,
muted, even with other women. And the thing is that, again, not to bring this to men again, but we're realizing as we're watching what's going on in Afghanistan is that it's not only their laws are not only applying to women now, they're starting to apply to men. Like, you absolutely must have the beard now.
Yes. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So it never stops with just the group that's being targeted first. All the men that were there and saying like this, yeah, you got to keep the women down that way. Now the laws are starting to apply to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
too,
See,
right?
it
It
starts
always
in
the
one
leopard
area.
will always, if the leopard licks your face to get a taste, count on it eating it. Yum
Dreamt
yum.
about a tiger last night, weirdly enough. I dreamt about
Okay.
a tiger for some reason. I don't know why. So yeah, this is what's happening in Afghanistan today, and I bring it back to what the Conservative Party of Canada just voted on yesterday to eliminate a woman's right to make a choice.
hmm
If you
And
think it can't come to what's in Afghanistan today, it did it in that country in less than 50 years,
mhm,
much less than because it's been like that since the early 90s.
mhm,
Now
mhm.
it's gotten even worse, and now it's affecting the men. Like you say, they never stop. They keep taking
Yeah.
and taking and taking and taking. And the Conservative Party of Canada is no goddamn different. Are they going to put women in full burqas like that tomorrow? No. But I guarantee you they're working their way up to it. First, they take the choice away. Then they take contraception away. Then they take IVF away. Then they go for same sex marriage. Then it's women
Uh,
in the workforce. They'll start
and
restricting their rights.
w-
There's a
well, and
pastor in the US who just talked about taking away women's suffrage, eliminating their right to vote. He said the
mhm,
reason Kamala Harris got as many votes as she did was because we allow women to vote. Can you fucking believe that?
mhm.
It's 2024, not
Well, no.
1924.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember the Conservative Party of Canada still has not signed on to pay equity, equal pay for equal work of equal
Still,
value as a concept
still.
because it's not merit based.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is merit based. It's equal work. The merit is in the work.
Yes.
But on that, what you're mentioning about a woman's right to choose, according to the Canadian press, um, Jagmeet Singh had a little fun with conservatives the other day.
Oh, yes.
Surprise tactical move by the NDP forced a debate in the House of Commons on abortion access this morning, that's yesterday morning, sidelining a conservative motion designed to use NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's own words against him. Remember when Jagmeet Singh said, we're not going to play the conservative games because the conservatives decided that they were going to use their opposition day to put a motion of non-confidence, but use the words that Jagmeet Singh said out loud when he told us again and again and again and again and again and again and again that he ripped up that agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I ripped
Yes.
it up.
Well, so the conservatives put it in the motion, says, well, you won't vote for your own words. It's like conservatives, one, the guy told you he's not going to vote for your motion. The guy told you he's not going to vote for any non-confidence motion presented by you. If the government is going to go down on a non-confidence motion presented by an opposition party, it's going to be one tabled by the New Democrats. Jagmeet Singh made that very, very, very clear. But you keep on trying, PP. That conservative motion is worded to show support for the right to strike and declares non-confidence in Liberal government for its recent moves to end labor disruptions by rail and port workers. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre on Wednesday called on the NDP to, quote, stand with unions and vote to bring down the Liberal government. But just ahead of the debate starting, NDP MP Heather McPherson seized the parliamentary remote control from the Conservatives and changed the channel to Canada's Global Assistance for Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights. The move pushes back debate on the Conservative motion, and a vote is expected to happen on the NDP motion after question period. The government faced a raft of opposition motions in the coming days ahead of the winter holiday break. So, yeah, little move by Jagmeet Singh's Conservatives. It seems that not only the Conservatives can play games in Parliament. So, very interesting move. Very, very interesting move. I'm looking for an article about it. It just says, yeah, the best one I have here is the Conservatives were decrying the procedural nonsense because, yes, we have a over 2-month long filibuster going on because the Conservatives are asking the government to hand over documents that they intend to use for an unconstitutional purpose to give to the RCMP, who says they don't want them because they can't use them. that way. But suddenly they say that they have a problem with procedural nonsense. Okay. According to this article, says when the Conservatives attempted to return to regular scheduled programming, the Liberals and NDP ganged up and voted against them. The Tories claimed that the NDP hijacked the House agenda to set Singh out of a tough spot. Really? Because you hijacked the House agenda to put Trudeau into a tough spot. Oh yeah, I forgot. Remember. It's only wrong when other people do it.
Yeah.
Quote, what we're witnessing today is an attempt by the NDP to stop our confidence motion on the NDP's leader's words that purport to stand up for unions and the union's right to strike, said Conservative MP Kyle Seaback. Conservative MP Shelley Cramp-Newman called it a procedural nonsense. The Conservatives' opposition motion, and she would know about that because she's the one that took over the leadership of the Status of Women Committee. So we can defer to her profound expertise in procedural nonsense. The Conservative opposition motion quotes Singh accusing Liberals of being too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. It also quotes Singh saying the Liberals will always ensure unions have no power by stepping in to stop labor disputes following Ottawa's recent interventions to end disruptions by rail and port workers. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre needled Singh on this in the House on Wednesday, calling on the NDP, quote, to stand with unions and support the motion to bring down the Liberal government when it comes to a vote next week. The government will face a raft of opposition motions in the coming days ahead of the winter holiday break. So, yeah. I'm looking for an article because, they wrote all these breathless articles about the vote to come and the procedural move. But sadly enough, there isn't an actual vote, an article about the vote on the actual motion, which kind of sucks. I'm not sure what it is here, but I'm going to guess sponsor of the motion, Kyle Seaback. Yep, that was his motion. Vote 910, yeas 146, nays 171. So it seems that the NDP wasn't alone in that, but it was fully supported by the Liberals and the Independents in the House, as well as the Green Party, with the Bloc Québécois and the Conservatives both voting together, the Bloc Québécois being true to its word, saying, hey, you didn't want to support breaking the bank to give senior citizens who are 65 to 74 an extra 10% on their OAS, so we will vote against you henceforth evermore. Again, the Conservatives showing their political impotence in the House as it is currently constituted yet once again. So there you go. And for the Bloc Québécois, they've got nothing to lose, voting with the Conservatives on non-confidence motions because the NDP made it clear they're not going to support them. So the Bloc Québécois knows that there's no risk of the government falling, for them getting a couple PR points for voting against the government. So that's why they're doing it, because if they were worried that the NDP might vote against it, maybe they wouldn't be so eager, all 29 of them, to vote yay on that. In case they're not ready now. So that is what happened on that front. The other thing, kids and cubs, that was some pretty big news yesterday was Patrick Brown, because he testified at the Public Safety and National Security.
I didn't get to see it.
I watched it yesterday. It was not a particularly eventful affair.
It would be.
So just so I mentioned, it's not particularly eventful, but was a good session. The thing that I stated, I think it was last week when they issued the summons, is that because Patrick Brown didn't seem particularly enthusiastic about showing up to testify, and which is why he needed to be summoned to get the summons in the first place. Claiming that he wouldn't really have anything to say. And like I said, he didn't have any bombs to drop, but he did have a couple of things to say that were kind of interesting. And there were some things that happened that were kind of interesting. The first thing that happened that caught my eye was CPC MP Raquel Dancho asked Patrick Brown about how all the brouhaha after the allegations against India were made public by the PM, what impact the brouhaha from the PM mentioning it has had on the Sikh community, rather than asking how the alleged India-sponsored criminal behavior on our territory has affected the Sikh community. Because Patrick Brown lives in the electoral district federally in Canada, where there is the highest number of Sikh anywhere in Canada. So he would have to his ear to the ground on how it is they are feeling about there actually being exploitation and coercion and even intimidation and murder on our soil. But she didn't ask about that.
No, of course not.
She asked how the community felt about the fallout from the Prime Minister having mentioned it out loud, but not about the things he was mentioning out loud. Very telling. When asked if he believes his campaign was targeted by India, Patrick Brown, for some reason, was not able to just say yes. As I mentioned, we probably would learn more from what it was he was trying very hard not to say on the day. So for some reason, he just couldn't say yes. Instead, he said, "I don't think any comment offered by the Indian government affected the result. You will notice here in that response how it is very carefully parsed to speak about comments by the Indian government and not actions." Because while there is no comment by the Indian government that affected the result, there might have been some actions. And of course, he immediately went to, well, nothing affected the end result. Let's remember, kids and cubs, that foreign interference is like bank robbery. You don't have to be successful at being a criminal. You just got to try. Doesn't matter if the attempts were successful at overturning the final result.
No.
There are many other stops along the spectrum before you get to the final result of an election, where that can have a little bit of an impact. Mr. Grizzly's off to go get some coffee, kids and cubs there. When asked if he would undergo the security clearance process with oversight in order to get more information to protect his community if the opportunity was offered, Patrick Brown, after some pressing, replied that he would. Now, one of the reasons he keeps on saying that he did not want to be testifying is because he didn't want to be brought in to the partisan political games that happens at committee. He said that he would have been perfectly happy and willing to testify at the Public Inquiry Commission with Justice Marie-Josée Hogg. But this forum he didn't want to. And it's questions like this that he wanted to avoid. He was then later asked if he had won the CPC leadership, would he get his security clearance through the regular oversight process? And again, saying he didn't want to be dragged into political fights. But even though up until then, nobody had mentioned the name of the particular MP who happens to be a party leader, who will not get his security clearance. Patrick Brown had no problem saying Poilievre's name, though.
Oh, interesting. I don't think they like one another.
No, I don't want to be dragged into political fights. Well, you know that there's this person. Well, I know that Mr. Polyev. No. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Get dragged into political fight.
Just gonna drop his name, are we? Okay.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be dragged into political fight. Okay.
Yeah.
That MP Mark Gerritsen pushed Patrick Brown. I think he asked his questions a little. He may have watched a few Good Men before going into there. Not sure it needed to be that assertive. But Mark Garrison pushed Patrick Brown, eventually getting him to acknowledge that certain behaviors alleged of the government of India, if not actual foreign interference, at least fall into a, quote, gray area. So he did get an admission. There's a little gray area. Then CPC MP Raquel Daigneault came back for another round, and she was working super hard to get Patrick Brown to say the federal government is to blame somehow for something, always looking for the social media clip.
What are you doing?
Snake.
Sorry.
Sibling, a snake.
The sibilance is just, there's actually software we have called de-esser, which is supposed to eliminate that. So it's like when you're doing it, I'm like, what are you doing? I'm an audio guy. I'm going crazy here.
She was a slippery, slithery snake in asking that question. Liberal MP Jennifer O'Connell was able to tease out that MP Kyle Seaback, an alleged 20-year friend of Patrick Brown, who was the co-coordinator of his campaign, along with Michele Rempel, who also left coordinating the campaign during it, never shared with him that he was leaving Brown's campaign because he didn't share Brown's vision. That's what Kyle Seaback said on the record afterwards. And a little bit of a mean girl twinge to it. So like, oh, that must have been very disappointing that a friend of 20 years didn't want to tell you that he didn't agree with your vision before leaving. So, yeah. Bloc Québécois MP Réal Fortin, I guess, lost interest with the foreign interference thing, and then tried to equate the city of Brampton, which is not a foreign entity, holding an anti-Bill 21 protest in Brampton, to foreign governments sponsoring criminal activity on our soil. If you're against foreign interference like this, don't you think that you, by holding that rally in your city of Brampton, were engaging in foreign interference? We're all part of the same country. It is quite possible that people in Brampton would like to maybe relocate to Quebec for work and can't because that bill is there. They do have a right to express an opinion, but the Bloc Québécois and Pierre Fortin seem to be very, very, very mad that people outside Quebec dare express an opinion on Bill 21 and try to equate that as some type of form of foreign interference. That line of questioning was for domestic consumption only in the province of Quebec, and shame on him for abusing the process, for going down that path. Then we got CPC MP Glenn Motz, who he too had lost interest in foreign interference and started asking Brown about crime in the city. It is the public safety, so they can ask about that. But yeah, it didn't seem to have enough material. And it's like, so let's talk about crime in your city and jail not bail and all that kind of stuff. Right? When asked if Brown had spoken to anyone from the Conservative Party of Canada prior to his testimony, because I think he had been asked originally if he had been contacted by some people and sort of give a shifty sort of answer, but that seemed to indicate no. But specifically about the CPC prior to his testimony, anyone from the CPC, Brown does mention that he had a conversation with CPC MP Doug Shipley about a personal matter, who, what a coincidence, is a member of this committee, but wasn't present yesterday to ask questions. How convenient. I had a phone call with one person from the Conservative Party of Canada prior to my testimony. But trust me, it was only about a personal matter. And it happens to be some guy who's on this committee who happens to not be here today because he probably thought that we knew that you'd probably ask that kind of question. But it was totally about personal stuff. Really. Then CPC MP Raquel Daigneault decided to get offended by Mark Gerritson's vigorous questioning of Patrick Brown and tried to pretend that Gerritson just subjected Brown to a shockingly unreasonable line of questioning. It wasn't. And her uninterested monotone delivery while she was making the accusation was really convincing. You could tell she really believed in what she was saying when she did it. She too lost interest and started asking about local crime. Just then a particular thick CPC MP named Daigneault asked Patrick Brown if he had any advice for projecting strength so that we are respected enough that all nations are deterred from attempting foreign interference on our soil. They won't even think about it because we've projected so much strength and command, so much respect. Which is a father-mucking stupid question, because if you've been paying attention to this file, the United States released the DOJ an indictment. If the United States hasn't managed it, how are we going to? Thank you for wasting our time and our money with a stupid, dumbass question. Ya twit. Patrick Brown was invited to leave. And Liberal MP Jennifer O'Connell tabled a motion to invite 3 more witnesses to testify, one of whom is Michele Rempel-Garner.
Interesting.
The other 2 of those being the 2 people to whom she was speaking on that alleged 45-minute debrief about the angry call she is alleged to have received from the Consul General of India. So the thing with Michele Rempel-Garner is she received the call. She complained about it then. There was so much that went on that call that it required a 45-minute debrief with 2 other people. There are other people who are speaking on the record, but under the condition of anonymity, saying, yes, this call did take place. Michele Rempel-Garner is denying, nope, no call. I was not coerced. My leaving was of my own volition. I wanted to run to replace Jason Kenney. 1 week later, I decided I was not going to do that. A bit like Bill Morneau decided he was leaving the Minister of Finance to run for Secretary General of OECD, but never really stood a chance. But the question for Michele Rempel-Garner is, okay, let's assume all of that is true, and it's not a story that you're telling us after the fact, and that, there wasn't anything that happened at that moment saying, I'm stepping down, and say, hey, I'm doing it, so I'm entertaining replacing Jason Kenney, because that gave you a nice out in that current nanosecond. And then 1 week later, well, I intended to, but I've decided against it. You were only gone 1 week. Why did you not return to Patrick Brown's campaign? Is my question. There was still a few weeks left. You stepped aside. You took an extra week, explored stuff, decided there was no market for you. Why didn't you come back? Seems to me I would come back and knock on the door, especially if I really believed in my candidate. Say, you know what? I thought I was going to do this, but I'm not. So it turns out I'm available. If you still need me, put me to work. But that did not happen. Interesting. So yeah, the meeting, for some reason, Raquel Dancho had asked for a couple of minutes to be able to review the wording, and then they came back into in camera. Not in camera. The cameras came back on, and there was a vote to adjourn. So I don't know if the vote. That motion is tabled, it's written down, and they get to go and talk about it for a few days, and then they come back next week and vote on it. Not sure. I was expecting that a vote would happen then, but it didn't. So it's still up in the air as to whether or not Michele Rempel-Garner will be actually summoned. But when it came time to actually issue the summons for Patrick Brown, it was a 7-4 vote on the committee. So I would assume it would be a similar vote to get her to come as well, if they actually do that. Mr. Grizzly, I think I didn't even send you the damn clip. I got the whole email written out, and it's sitting there right in front of me. It's a good thing.
Send it to me, right? So.
It's a good thing I am allegedly cute. Because there are some days I am not too bright, and if it wasn't for cuteness, because that's all I would have left to go on, I would not get by in this world. I actually wrote it to you before the show.
Oh, and still didn't send it.
So that you
Here, I got this all prepped for you. Why won't you load it? Load what?
But I sent it to you. I'm convinced I have.
You didn't. You didn't.
I didn't even get to the point where I put your name in the to field. I got distracted before I did that. Oh my God. Squirrel, yeah, really. Squirrels running one way and puppies running the other. I don't know what to do. Oh, man. I tell you. Oh, while you're queuing that up, we did get a gentle correction from the kits, Mr. Grizzly. The bombing of Pearl Harbor anniversary is actually tomorrow, December 7th.
Oh, December 7th. Sorry. My apologies.
Mm.
I knew it was
December
7th.
But you were right. There was an anniversary of a bombing on December 6th, and it's the Halifax Harbor explosion.
Yes.
That was December 6th.
I have a clip about that too, so we'll show that later.
All right.
That wasn't a bombing; it was an explosion. Yes, you're
The
right.
explosion, yes, wasn't a bombing because it was. I think it was everything on the ship just went boom.
So hang on a sec. I got to go back here and check on something before I'm trying to. I got the clip. I just have to cue it up to the right moment.
Okay. Now the clip here is Jennifer O'Connell from the Liberal Party of Canada MP, her first round of questioning of Patrick Brown during it, just to give a little taste of flavor, because the really, like I said, the most dynamic ones were when Mark Gerritsen was pressuring him and pressing him on the question, and when Réal Fortin from the Bloc Québécois went on his whole thing trying to equate a domestic protest to an attempt at foreign interference. And that clip, unfortunately, I can't use because one, it's entirely in French, so it would be boring. Number two, but it has actually nothing to do. I mean, it was a great moment of drama and whatnot, but it had nothing to do with the actual subject matter and was not on point in any way. So, what's the point of bringing you a clip of something that's not on point? It would all it would do is just show you that some person took an opportunity to go down a weird path, and it was awkward and weird.
Well, here we go.
All right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor Brown, for attending. I actually want to follow up on something that you said that I found quite interesting. You said that you were involved in a conference call where MP Rumble Garner, in answer to Mr. McGregor's question, had raised concerns that also came from the Council General that they were not comfortable with you using the term sick nation. So are you suggesting, is it your understanding from that call that someone spoke to MP Rumble Garner raising the Consul General's concern about your language being used during the campaign?
I was going to say, first of all, I don't believe that's the reason that she left the campaign, but I believe.
Sorry, I didn't ask. I asked about the details of the conference call and your answer to Mr. McGregor about you being informed by your campaign team that there were concerns from the Consul General raised by MP Rumble Garner not to use the term sick nation. Can you please confirm that that is what was discussed on your conference call?
Correct. Do you want me to expand further?
Sure. If you can tell me the details of who asked MP Rumble Garner to raise the language you were being used.
So the concern that was raised was that I had used the term on a number of occasions, Sikh Nation, and the Consul General had expressed directly to MP Garner that was something that obviously they didn't agree with, that it could be viewed in nationalistic terms towards the Sikh community. And so at the conference call, I had a deputy national campaign manager, Jaskar Sandhu, who we sort of assigned to talk to Michele about it after the conference call. And what was agreed upon is that I wouldn't use the word Sikh Nation. I'd use the word Sikh Qom.
Do you think, sorry, I have limited time. Do you think it's appropriate for a foreign government to send a message to a sitting MP that you should be changing the language because it's not welcomed by that foreign nation? Do you think that's an appropriate election activity by a foreign government? And do you regret accepting their advice of changing your language, not based on your campaign or constituent feedback, but because the Consul General asked MP Rempel-Garner to tell you that they did not appreciate that language? Do you think that's acceptable in a Canadian election race?
Well, I didn't get the chance to finish what I was saying before, but I said what we changed it to was Sikh Kaum, which is the Punjabi word for nation. And it was.
Thank you. But my question was around, do you think it's appropriate for a foreign government to ask a sitting MP to speak as a co-chair on a leadership race, to raise their objections to your campaign, not based on constituents, but based on that foreign government's opinion? Do you think I think that constitutes foreign interference pretty clearly? Foreign interference doesn't matter about the outcome. It's the intention to have that foreign government influence the actions in Canadian elections. Do you think that was an appropriate action for a foreign government in a Canadian election?
I certainly think that the consul generals in India have been more robust in their opinions than some of us would be comfortable with.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you had acknowledged that's not something you're comfortable with. So you mentioned also earlier that you said that the Indian government, through the Consul General, had expressed displeasure previously with your positions on things. How specifically did they express displeasure? Did they, as articles are reporting, did they suggest that they were going to speak to volunteers about not signing up voters for you? Did they uninvite you from attending events? Did they suggest that they would provide funds and campaign support to other campaigns? How exactly did they show displeasure?
So I've never had a direct threat like that from the Indian government. So it's never been something as direct as saying, we're not going to, we're going to raise funds for someone else or tell people not to sign up memberships. But, in previous occasions, when there's been positions that I have taken that the government of India doesn't support, I would hear directly from the Consul General that
don't you think
why they don't support it.
Don't you think as an elected member, the only people that your position should be, the feedback you should be hearing from are the people that actually elect you?
Well, I would say what is the greatest determination for me is what's the best interest of my residents and to do what is in their best interest, to fight for what is in their best interest. But I would say it is not unusual in Canada to have consul generals from multiple nations that are very vocal in their advocacy.
Do you think
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell.
A very effective line of questioning, though, right?
Oh yeah, no, I like her.
Yeah, she wasn't like, asks about the call. Well, I don't know why she left. No, I'm not asking about why she left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she never asked that question. She stayed on point the whole time.
Yes, and the point that she was trying to prove here, and she did successfully, right? She made the point. Foreign interference. It's the attempt.
Yeah, whether it's successful or not is irrelevant. It's the attempt.
Yes, he was out in public saying a word, either Sikh nation. We heard in the thing that either comes to mean Sikh nation or Sikh community. It seems that they are interchangeable within the Sikh community. I don't know if that's true, but that was part of the testimony that was there, and knowledge of other people on the committee. But they did not like that. They let it be known, and he did change his behavior.
Yeah,
the foreign interference worked.
Yeah, that's pretty spineless of him. Plain and simple, spineless. I'd be like, sorry, you're another country. You don't get to tell me what to say or do for my constituents in my country. You don't live here, I do.
You don't get to come into my damn house and tell me how to arrange the furniture.
You don't get to do that.
Right.
And that would be
So-
the most polite diplomatic way I could say, I'm sorry, I'm not, no, you don't get to tell me how to speak in my country to my constituents. You don't live here.
I'm
You don't
sorry,
get to
this
tell me
ain't,
that.
yeah, I'm sorry, this ain't a Burger King. We don't take orders here.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so,
Now I want a hamburger.
so the foreign interference didn't have, you can't say conclusively changed the result, but sure as hell changed the behavior, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It worked.
Yeah, it did. We're under fire.
It worked. So, that's I watched it, so you didn't have to. Like I said, no big fireworks, whatnot. A couple of little admissions, like I said, like him saying, yes, it did cross into the gray area, and here with Jennifer O'Connell also admitting that didn't leave me the most comfortable person. But you can see in that one, he really didn't first want to engage on the topics.
No, not at all.
But when she asked the question again in a manner so pointed, they had to say yes. Notice, do you want me to expand on that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm wondering the part of it, how much of this is no, don't make me say it. Listen, India, I really tried everything. I waited until I was summoned, and you saw that I tried to get around, but she just asked me the right question so precisely, and I can't lie. I'm under oath. But I really didn't want to tell her. She made me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if we are talking about the overall global context of a former government that is alleged to be commissioning people and having some type of coordinating function, usually with gangs, whatnot, who are probably not as meticulous and maybe a little more sloppy than secret services and stuff like that, committing crimes on foreign soils, and then of course they get found out and it gets traced back to them. And if that's evidence. Well, let's put it this way. If they work so hard to get someone not to say Sikh Nation, somebody's saying a lot of things that they don't want them to hear. How hard do they work to quiet that? Well, again, there's a certain once Canadian citizen from British Columbia and their family and friends and loved ones who would like to say that it seems that they're very serious. And according to the U.S. government, given that indictment, it seems they are indeed very serious. So I could perfectly understand why Patrick Brown would probably want to be able to have that. No, they made me. Defense. We're not talking about people, just bringing a special pie with some chocolate X-Lax to the picnic. And go, ooh, your life is going to be inconvenienced for a day or two. We're talking about people that want to take you out.
Yeah, simple as that. And not to dinner.
Again, we don't think about that in Canada because we don't think about ourselves as a nation like that. One of the big global players. Like, why would anybody have any interest in trying to influence a politician from Canada? Like, come on. We don't really have any power. But we do have the ear of the world's biggest superpower.
Yeah, and they don't like it when you interfere in their government without their permission.
Mm-hmm. So, but a lot of people see us as an attractive way to get there. Also, we can't control the head ourselves, but if Canada has the ear, maybe we can, as the saying goes, maybe we can control the neck that turns the head.
Maybe.
If we say it, the United States might not be receptive, but if Canada says it, if we can get Canada to say it, maybe the United States will do something about it. We are an attractive target. We don't think of ourselves that way, but we are quite attractive, actually.
We have all the minerals, all the water, all the wheat. I mean,
Well, if you add that on top of that, that's a whole other layer.
Yeah, all the oil. We have all of it.
Yes,
We have
but we are the
everything
best
everybody
friend and
wants.
closest ally of the world's greatest superpower.
Yes.
Because sometimes we can get them to change their minds. Hmm? So, yeah, it's not something to just dismiss and say, oh, well, we don't need to be bothered about that. Who are we anyway? It's like we are, again, we don't think of ourselves that way, but we are actually somebody on the global stage. A lot of people care about us, and a lot of people are interested in us. So, yeah. All right, kits and cubs. Those were the two sort of big overall news things over the past 24 to 36 hours here. But there are a couple of other things that are taking place with a whole bunch of other files that we have been talking. Not too many more big developments on the Israel Lebanon thing there. It's pretty much steady as he goes. She goes. The ceasefire appears to be holding, even though there are everybody screaming that there are violations, but the ceasefire does appear to be holding there. So that's what's going on. They're still protesting in Georgia. Don't know how that's going to resolve, but that one seems to be settling in to be some type of protracted event. But in Syria, it seems that the rebel group is still making some progress, and this is all like within just a little bit over a week from now. But it seems that they are now in the city of Hama, which is just south of Aleppo, and it's on the road to Homs, which it seems they're going for next, which is apparently the gateway to Damascus, which is the capital, and then beyond. They could go. They're also not far from the coastline, which is controlled by the Alawites, and that's the sectarian group to which President Bashar al-Assad belongs. Hama is also very symbolically important for the rebels, as it is the scene of a brutal massacre that took place in 1982 that was ordered by al-Assad's father, in which many Sunni Muslims got stomped down. Heiko Vimin, who is with the International Crisis Group, with an international crisis group and neighbor in Lebanon, says the level of dysfunction in the Syrian regime forces is astounding. There seems to be a problem with integration of artillery, infantry, and air force. You know, everything a modern everything a modern army is supposed to do. They seem not to be very good at it. And of course, as we mentioned previously, according to Janice Stein, the level of morale within the Syrian army is extremely low at the moment, so much so that people are abandoning their missions. And it seems that Bashar al-Assad has a double of the members of the military in an effort to get them not to abandon their mission. The sort of rebellion is led by a group called Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham, and its leader is a man named Abu Muhammad al-Jalani. Previously, they used to be associated with Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. It seems that they've broken away from them and are forming a new identity, trying to be a legitimate type organization. Even Abu Muhammad al-Jari says that they entered Hama to, quote, cleanse a 40-year-old wound, and they are seeking a victory with no vengeance in it. So it seems to be a sustained campaign over many months, over a long period of time, to try to say, yes, we are Islamist, but we're not seeking to kill all women or something, like as is the case of Afghanistan, or a little more moderate. The Hezbollah's new leader, because their former had been assassinated in airstrikes by Israel, said that the group will be alongside it with these caveat words as much as it can, considering that, well, it's pretty much depleted resource-wise, given everything it's been doing in Israel over the past little bit. So those are the developments on that. That keeps going, but the rebel group seems to be moving relatively quickly, and what aims the Russian military is helping al-Assad with at the moment does not seem to be deterring the rebel group. So we'll see that. Mr. Weasley, do you have anything?
I do actually. I have a video clip I want to share with you in regards to because of what the current Ford government is doing about the encampments across the province. And I'm going to
Yes.
share this with you quickly
Okay.
because he's
How
trying
long
to
is it, Mr. Grizzly?
33 seconds.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a longer clip. Okay.
No, it's 33 seconds.
There are more than 10,000 people facing homelessness in Toronto, and each night 300 people will be turned away from the shelter system. A patient languishing in the hospital system costs $30,000 a month, but just a fraction at $4,000 a month in supportive housing. 90 Dunn Avenue is Canada's first social medicine housing initiative that will include mental, primary care, and social services all on site. It'll be a new and permanent home for 51 people. To make a difference, it means realizing housing as a human right.
So the just behind this is, the solution to homelessness is housing for all. A 1 month hospital stay costs us, the taxpayers, $30,000. 1 month in prison is $12,000. 1 month in shelter is $6,000. 1 month in supportive housing is $4,000. We can save $26,000 by getting people out of hospital into housing. $8,000 by getting them out of prison and into housing, and $2,000 a month per person per year. So $24,000 a month to get people out of shelter and into permanent housing. $24,000 a year, I should say, per person, and that's 51 people that are being housed right now. Now, the Ford government has decided that they're going to dismantle encampments across the province, but they're not actually doing anything to help with the homelessness crisis because they refuse the federal public dollars for that.
Right.
Simply because he wants to punch down on those he sees that are beneath him. And yet,
Indeed.
the funny thing is, every single one of us is so much closer to being homeless than we are to being a billionaire or a millionaire.
Indeed. According to the Canadian press, legislation aimed at dismantling homeless encampments in Ontario will soon be introduced. Premier Doug Ford announced Thursday, along with a pledge to use the notwithstanding clause again if courts interfere, because, of course, we can just trample on the rights of the fundamental human rights of the homeless. I mean, they're homeless. Fuck them. Right? That's the Doug Ford attitude. They are good people of Ontario. These people are beneath you, and they are poor because it is a character flaw. We will teach them a lesson or two. Because he could spend all these resources on actually housing them.
Well, here's a good quote from Trent Morris. I don't know who Trent Morris is. He's an individual on the Twitter. He says, local politician who has recently expropriated a science center and a waterfront park for his buddies cites charter right of all citizens to use public spaces in defense of move to criminalize homelessness.
Interesting how that applies now.
Yeah.
Ford wrote to 12 mayors who asked him for tougher laws on encampments, saying the province will provide the tools to help municipalities clear the sites and crack down on public drug use. Quote, our government shares your concerns about the need to keep our children, families, and communities safe, Ford wrote to the mayors of Barrie, Windsor, Oshawa, and other cities. That's why we are acting to put an end to public disorder, drug use, and trafficking, and loss of public space that have resulted from the widespread growth in encampments. And again, that is bullshit, because if you were concerned about keeping children, families, and communities safe, we would not have foster kids staying in Airbnbs and bedbug infested hotel rooms. So you can shove your concern. Homelessness and encampments have risen dramatically under Ford's term, with tent cities popping up in municipalities small and large throughout Ontario. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario says there were 1,400 encampments across the province in 2023, and for some reason, media and the public are not holding him accountable for the fact they exist in the first place. Shelters throughout the province are full, with some 12,000 people in Toronto's shelter system alone. The mayors asked Ford to strengthen involuntary addiction treatment laws and have the province become an intervener in court cases where municipalities are looking to clear encampments. They also asked for trespass laws to be strengthened and allow for arrests and jail time for those who repeatedly trespass, as well as legislation to prohibit open drug use, similar to the ban on open consumption of alcohol. The mayors also asked Ford to use, quote, the notwithstanding clause to ensure these measures are implemented in a timely and effective way. In response, Ford promised more accountability for shelter service managers and more funding to increase shelter space. Ford said the new legislation will be, quote, explicitly and unequivocally prohibiting the use of illicit drugs in public, with new tools and authorities to help police enforce its prohibition. Quote, there will be penalties for those who, quote, deliberately and continually break the law, plus new, quote, approaches to treatment and rehabilitation, he wrote. Ford added that he does not expect to use the controversial legislative tool known as the Notwithstanding Clause that would override the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Quote, however, should the courts interfere with our shared goal of effectively addressing and clearing out encampments, using these enhanced tools, translated from bullshit to English, is, however, should the court decide that we have violated your fundamental rights 3 ways from Sunday by bringing in these enhanced tools, not interfere. The court doesn't interfere with anybody's shared goals for making things better. The court cares only about the law and the Constitution.
Correct.
That's it. The court has no agenda to interfere with you doing anything. You do the things according to the law, you can do the thing. You do the things not according to the law, you can't do the thing.
Well,
it's that simple.
Listen to this. This is for those of you who might not be aware of this. You need to understand something. Between 40 and 50% of foster youth become homeless within 18 months of leaving the foster care system. That's a disturbing fact.
Yep. So if you're criminalizing homelessness and you get foster child that leaves the system, graduates from the system, but hasn't been given the tools.
Well, it says, yeah,
and the means to live independently.
Often lack the resources, support, and life experiences to transition to adulthood.
Yes.
Some factors that increase the risk of becoming homeless include running away while in foster care, placement instability. This one's kind of disturbing. Being male. History of physical abuse, delinquent behaviors, mental health disorders. Other challenges that foster youth face include unemployment, lack of permanent connections with family, disrupted education, and getting caught up in the criminal justice system. Foster care doesn't always lead to youth homelessness. However, a history of foster care correlates with becoming homeless at an earlier age and remaining homeless for a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm. Over 30 years ago, when I was a foster kid, the Children's Aid Society of Ottawa had a pilot program, which I'm surprised is not everywhere. It was called SIL, Semi-Independent Living Program, where they brought kids in starting around the age of 16 and taught them some basic life skills and budgeting and all that kind of stuff. And then when they left foster care, so long as they were pursuing their education, would get a stipend of a certain amount of dollars per month, because until they were the age of 21.
Well, so many kids
Start
just
learning
literally tossed out onto the street once you age out at 18. You're like, you're on your own, see ya. Like, wait a minute.
And that program was extremely useful and beneficial to me. It really helped. Mm-hmm. So not sure why that's a pilot program that has not been expanded. And there is no excuse in 2024 to be sending kids out into the world, not even know how to prepare a meal or to wash their own clothes.
And it's, to say that, well, the foster parents are supposed to teach. Are they? Is that what do they do that? Do the foster parents teach that?
Mine
I'm sure
did.
Some do. I'm sure some do. Not everybody. I'm sure some do. I'm sure many do, but not everybody. When you've got 40 to 50% of the homeless are foster children, obviously 50 to 60% are teaching, but 40 to 50% aren't.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I was in what was called they had different classifications. Number 13 foster home, which is just being co-located with an actual family.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are living in group homes with staff people, are they being taught how to?
Yeah, probably not.
My foster mother got tired of doing laundry for 6 boys, so we learned
to do it on your own. Yeah.
Not sure how it works in these group homes. Ford continued, this includes the province becoming an intervener in any court case that restricts the ability of municipalities to regulate and prohibit encampments so long as the approach you pursue is aligned with provincial best practices. So basically telling the mayors, hey, if you ask for it, we'll intervene for you, possibly. In January 2023, an Ontario Superior Court justice ruled that the Waterloo region could not use a municipal bylaw to evict people living in an encampment in Kitchener because that bylaw was deemed to be in violation of Section 7 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The judge said lack of shelter spaces means the bylaw infringed upon charter rights. It's kind of hard to accuse people of the crime of being homeless if you're actually not going to provide homes.
Yeah.
Ford's new measures will do little to help the encampment issue because there's nowhere for people to go, said Lauren Lamb, an outreach worker in Toronto. He's not actually fixing the problem of homelessness. He's actually just fixing the problem in terms of making people invisible. And people don't stay invisible for long. NDP leader Merritt Stiles said people who are homeless will continue to move from encampment to encampment as long as there are inadequate levels of housing and supports for them. Quote, we should be working, as I know most municipalities are doing right now, to try to make sure that people can be moved into shelters and homes. That is the solution to the encampments. And right now, what are you going to do? Move them onto another park? The truth is we have to have a place for people to live, a shelter for them to stay in. And unless we have that, this is going to continue. Green Party leader Mike Schreiner said Ford had 6 years as a premier to build enough housing. Schreiner says he believes Ford is acting on the issue now because he's considering calling an early election. Quote, I think the premier is scrambling because he's feeling pressure from voters, Schreiner said. The premier, almost every action he's taken right now is not about what's good for the people of Ontario. It's what's good for Doug Ford's personal political needs. Add to that, Kits and Cubs, that it might be Doug Ford trying to attempt to change the channel, given that his multiple attempts to try to be Prime Minister of Canada and an international statesman didn't work, including down to his video not working when he had his big audition with Fox. So he was reduced to audio only. Probably needed a new subjects. This one strikes me a little bit like the Liberals coming in with the GST cut and the $250 check, and you're thinking like, okay, this is a nice announcement and has some flashy things in terms of retail politics, but it doesn't look like it was completely well thought out because you designed it this way. It's like, yeah, mayors, if you ask us to, maybe we'll consider intervening. And we're going to make all these encampments illegal. Don't have anywhere else to really put them on. But but I'm doing it. Watch me. I'm flapping my arms and moving a lot of wind. And, look at me. And I great. My heart's in the right place. Even if it doesn't work, still vote for me.
Here's a clip that sums it up.
It is an issue affecting cities across the province, and after a number of Ontario's mayors asked the province for help, the premier announced today there will be new legislation to help municipalities deal with homeless encampments. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us now with the details. Siobhan.
Well, mayors all over Ontario agree they need more help to deal with the problem of homelessness. There's less consensus, though, about what exactly that help should look like. We'll get a better idea of what the premier has in mind in the final days of the legislative session next week.
The government's preparing legislation for next week to crack down on homeless encampments. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario counted 1,400 of them last year.
We've heard the people of the province of Ontario loud and clear. We've heard from our municipal friends loud and clear. They want the encampments cleared out.
There are promises for more funding for shelter space, tools for police to crack down on illegal drugs in public, penalties for those who continually break the law, and new approaches to treatment and rehab.
We think that the resources that we're providing next week and the enhancements that we're providing next week will allow our partners to remove encampments.
So Doug Ford says he doesn't think he'll have to use the notwithstanding clause to override the charter, but it's a tool he is prepared to reach for if necessary. Earlier this fall, the premier dared mayors to ask him to.
Let's see if they have the backbone to do it.
A 2023 court decision blocks municipalities from clearing encampments unless there's a shelter space for the homeless to go to.
This is an incredible step forward.
The mayor of Barrie, one of more than a dozen who asked the premier for these measures.
They have to be used incredibly cautiously. They have to be well organized. And we need to make sure that we're continually investing.
The mayor of Toronto, skeptical.
We don't need to clog up our courts to deal with encampments.
Condemning the contemplation of the notwithstanding clause.
Help us build more supportive housing. Help us create more shelters. Help us bring people indoor. At the end of the day, that is what will work.
For the provincial opposition, the devil's in the details.
I want to see what he's offering up, but if there are not real housing solutions included in that legislation, then we're going to have to keep pushing for that.
There are also accusations more financial help for cities comes too late.
Now we're at a crisis point, and the Premier's solution is to tell people to leave when they have no place to go.
There should have been a strategy years ago, not months ago, with funding attached.
The Ford government last invoked the notwithstanding clause 2 years ago to try and prevent a strike by school support workers. They ultimately had to back off that move after national outcry. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Moore.
So, you have a bunch of people who have, it would seem to me that have never actually faced a difficult day in their lives, who are now taking people who don't have a place to live and they're going to criminalize them. Which, didn't we just say it's $12,000 a month to keep somebody in jail?
I believe so.
It's not about the money.
Just house people.
It's not about the money.
No.
Because they're willing to spend a whole lot more money we don't need to spend. Because they don't
if
like
it comes to
these
punching
people.
down
They
on
need to
people.
punch down.
Yep. Yep. When it comes to punching down, it's limitless.
Yeah. Funny how that works, right?
There's always money for that. Always money for that.
We could prop people up and save $8,000 a month doing it. But no. We'd rather spend $12,000 and imprison them.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's some framing, right? Because we just saw the mayor of Barrie, Mayor Alex Nuttall, in this article from CBC. I'll be happy services on the ground to help individuals who are looking for it. I'll be happy when families can start to use parks again in the way there are concerns with relation to their kids going on a slide and falling on a needle or finding weapons inside of parks. When asked what level of force he was prepared to accept to remove encampments from parks, Nuttall said thankfully the situation has not come to that point yet, but he would look to provincial and federal standards to act, quote, in a thoughtful and cautious manner. Local officials already work with people in encampments to offer them services and housing, he said. Quote, it's not a one-night problem. We had an individual in the city of Barrie. That individual's police would be coming and dealing with this. He wasn't going to accept the housing and accept the offers that were being made to him, and that individual moved on. Nuttall said he did not know where the man went. Because once they move away, we can stop caring about them. Because they're less than human. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Move to another city. Be someone else's problem. Shoo. That's the extent of it.
So effectively.
Or lock them up.
That's what it is.
So we don't have to see him anymore. The problem's too hard. I've tried nothing, and I'm all out of solutions.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Just lock them up.
Do I have to go back to the
Nobody
Guardian
will care.
article from 2019 about how Finland has put an end to homelessness because they put people in homes, gave them a stipend, and next thing you know,
We know how to
they
do
started
this.
to get clean and sober. They started to get employment. They started to put money back into the economy. We know how to fix this, people. We know how to do this.
Yep. So they're taking away the encampments, and of course, they're shutting down 10 supervised consumption sites, right? And banning the opening of new ones. In their place, the government is launching 19 new homelessness and addiction recovery treatment hubs, plus 375 highly supportive housing units at a planned cost of $378 million. All the money they're putting into this, and tops up that $378 million. In her annual report released this week, Auditor General Shelley Spence said the province's decision to close the supervised consumption sites was made, quote, without proper planning. Really? The hallmark of the Ford government. She also found the government has no strategy in place to mitigate, quote, an increased risk of overdoses likely to put a further burden on overcrowded emergency rooms. The province is shifting to an abstinence-based model as it moves away from harm reduction. Health officials, advocates, and homeless people say Health Minister Sylvia Jones has previously said no one will die as a result of the change, because she could totally predict and guarantee that.
Yeah.
Don't worry, no one will die as a result of the change. She can't promise that. She can't know that. I know. There are a total of 2,108. That's sort of like, we're worried about the homeless people. patting on that. Toot, 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 don't worry your pretty little head. No one will die. How are you going to know about it anyway? We won't tell you. Wink. I hate this government. I hate this government so much. 2,108 community addiction treatment beds across the province as of August 2024, Jones's office said. The Ford government has added 500 treatment beds since it came to power in 2018. Doctors, nurses, and frontline workers say accessing treatment beds is nearly impossible as demand far outstrips the number of available spots. Toronto saw several large encampments pop up in parks during the COVID-19 pandemic. Under former Mayor John Tory, Toronto police cracked down hard with a series of raids in 4 parks throughout the summer of 2021. And in this article, when they mention here the Auditor General, Shelley Spence, saying that she found that the government has no strategy in place to mitigate an increased risk of overdoses, likely to put a further burden on overcrowded emergency rooms. Doug Ford was also on over camera yesterday saying something like this: when little Johnny scrapes his leg, he doesn't need to go to the ER.
Mm-hmm.
Stop overcrowding the ERs with stuff. Because yesterday, the Canadian Institutes for Health Information, also referred to as CIHI, released a report saying that 1 in 7 hospital visits in Canada are for minor infections like a throat infection or an ear infection, or for even just needing to have your prescriptions renewed. But you don't have a dedicated family doctor, and that could be done by another entity, but nobody's established that yet. So Doug Ford wants you not to go to the emergency room when you have no other options because he didn't find you a doctor, when you just have a scrape, so the emergency room can be left for those who really need it for real emergencies. But he is closing down the supervised consumption sites so that more people can occupy the space that Johnny was occupying with an overdose that was also not needed and preventable had he just decided to give people, treat the most vulnerable among us like they are actually human beings and provide them with the services, because he's paying the money. He just doesn't want to spend it on them for that.
How soon before we see Weston Wellness Centers popping up across the country at your local Shoppers Drug Mart or your local superstore? How soon? You know it's coming. It's just a matter of time. It's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, I'll be surprised. I'd be shocked. I have one more clip for you before we wrap up. This is Doug in his finest moment. Not.
To Queen's Park now, where the Premier is proposing new legislation to help Ontario's mayors deal with the issue of homeless encampments.
Doug Ford is promising new tools and supports to help address the issue and says he believes it can be done in line with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has the details.
The Premier says new legislation is coming to help cities and towns deal with the growing problem of encampments. The promise comes in a letter sent to a dozen Ontario mayors. They're a group that responded to something of a challenge Doug Ford issued in late October.
Why don't the big city mayors actually put in writing that they want the province to change the homeless program, make sure that we move the homeless along, and why don't they put in, use the notwithstanding clause or something like that? Let's see.
You can really tell he thought about it.
More than 12 mayors asked the Premier to do just that, but hundreds more leaders in local politics and law have urged the Premier not to. Ford is promising more supports for shelters, tools for police to clear encampments and crack down on public drug use. The Premier says he's confident that the coming bill is common sense, in line with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So he writes that he doesn't expect the legislation will need to proactively invoke Section 33 of the Charter. But he says if courts get in the way, the government is fully prepared to use the notwithstanding clause.
The last time the Ford government invoked the notwithstanding clause was 2 years ago to try and prevent a strike by school support workers. That move rescinded after national outcry. The new bill will be introduced next week in the final few days before MPPs leave for their winter break. At Queen's Park, Siobhan.
So, I mean, it was a lot of that was repetition of the previous clip, but I wanted to highlight Doug Ford and his attitude. Move the homeless along. Move the homeless along. I don't want to see them. Make them be gone, is what he's saying.
Mm-hmm. Because then you could tell he put a lot of thought, right? And that there was a lot of preparation and comms there. Because we have to turn the homeless law to deal with this homeless thing. You know, folks? I'm up 24/7 on the phone trying to solve the problem because my heart goes out to them.
He doesn't have
Nobody cares more than me.
He doesn't have a heart. He's the world's only living heart donor.
I know. With the number of times his heart has gone out to people, it would be statistically surprising for him to have any left.
8 years of underfunding. Literally 8 years of underfunding.
Oh my God, this guy, he is so, oh my God, he's incompetent. It's unbelievable. Painfully so. Painfully so. Okay. The last little bit of news I have, you know what? I'm going to save it for the Easter egg. Mr. Grizzly, do we have a show?
I have an Easter egg as well, but sure. We have a show.
Okay.
I think we have a show.
Kids and Cubs. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. Now, if you would like to not miss an episode of our wonderfully informative and delightfully entertaining show, I might be biased. You might want to scan that QR code that just appeared on the screen because thanks to the Ray Girl, we have a pod page and she sponsors it. So if you scan that and go right there, click subscribe. When we have something that's fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. And if you are listening, then you use those lovely digits on the lovely hands, or you use your voice command to go to podpage.com/The True North Eager Beaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. Again, click subscribe. We come directly to you. Now, if you'd like to support us in other ways, maybe you need to make like Kits, Elaine, and Cassie and surf yourselves on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where we have 3 buttons waiting for you. Like, share, and subscribe. And they're a little thirsty for attention, so they really want you to click on them. So do that, and well, we get ourselves just a little bit of happy. So thank you so much. And if you would like to support us in other ways than the QR code by Mr. Grizzly's head will bring you to our coffee page. And that's where you will find our tip jar. And if you like the show and you want to encourage us to do more, well, that's where you can drop a couple of coins, maybe some bills if you can spare them, and say, "Atta Beaver, atta Grizzly, you did a good job. Please keep up the good work." So do that, and we would be very, very, very grateful. Thank you so much. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. Now, if you're not able to contribute financially, don't worry about it, because the gift of your attention and participation are the ones that matter the most to us, and we love to hear from you. So if you would like to tell us what you think about the show, or if you have some suggestions for us, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. It's a good way to let us know. Or maybe at TrueEager at Blue Sky or on Twitter, or maybe our original blog page, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook. Or if you happen to be listening on the YouTube page, right down below in the comments section, just leave us a little something. We read everything, not able to get back to everyone, but we do read everything, and we appreciate your contributions, because democracy is something that you do if you live in British Columbia, beautiful British Columbia. And if you happen to live in the electoral district of Cloverdale, Langley City, then you have a federal by-election coming up in 10 days. So please do what you need to do to be able to cast an informed vote. And if you live in the Alberta electoral district, provincial, this one, of Lethbridge West, you have a provincial by-election on December 18th. So please research your candidates and make the best choice you can. And if you have the luxury, don't vote just for yourself, but vote for someone in your community who needs help as well. All right, Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
Yeah, we really need to talk to our MPPs, our MPs, and our MLAs about not harming those who are the most vulnerable in our society, those who have addictions, those who are homeless, those who are homeless addicts. And not everybody that's homeless is an addict. And matter of fact, the large, vast majority of people who are homeless don't even use. More people have addictions that have full-time jobs. There are also many people who are fully employed who are homeless. We need to talk to our MPPs, our MPs, and our MLAs. We need to write letters and say, listen, fix this problem. We know how to do it. Show them the article written in The Guardian about how Finland did it. Direct them to Finland. House people and give them a stipend. UBI and housing can end this problem and save us millions of dollars in the process.
Maybe
and
even
say,
billions.
listen, I do not give a shit what your puppet masters say, how they need somebody to punch down on, because I'm sick of this. I'm sick of you punching down on those who cannot punch up. I'm sick of it. I've had it up to here. No more. We're going to help those who need the help, and it's going to save us millions of dollars in the process. And during that process, we can put more money into programs that need it, into healthcare, helping families who have children with autism, into education, into post-secondary education, where we can get rid of loans and fund it completely. We can do this. We need the political will. So get out there, write the letters, petition your MPP, your MP, and your MLA to put an end to this once and for all. We know how to do it, and we know it will save us millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. And at the same time, free up plenty of hospital beds for those who actually need it. See, I borrowed a couple of lines from Doug Ford there. So get out there, write those letters. Make them know your voice needs to be heard and that you're pissed off.
Good point. Good point. All right. Mr. Grizzly, please. Cue. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors. The Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community. And The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
You have a Easter egg, sir?
All right, Mr.
Okay, well, let me just pull this up. And because it is the 104th anniversary of the Halifax Harbor explosion, I present to you something I'm sure we've all seen before, but it's time to share it again.
My God, look at that. Yeah, thank God she's a half a mile away. Huh? She's loaded, boys. You gotta get out of here. It's full of explosives.
Children, come on.
Oh, no. Bill, get out of here. Vince!
We're back in the school.
Please, get these children out of here. That ship is gonna blow. No!
Mr. Coleman.
Hurry! Hurry! You gotta get these people out of here. That ship is gonna blow. The train. What? People, get out of here. It's gonna blow up. Mission ship on fire. Stop train. Please, God, answer.
Coleman, there's no time.
The train's coming in towards Pier 6. I've got to warn you.
Come on, Vince, come on.
There are 700 people aboard it. I've got to stop it. Come on, acknowledge.
Halifax was devastated.
9,000 wounded, 2,000 dead, including Vince Coleman, dispatcher.
May I say right here how much I love the Heritage Minutes?
Yeah.
I really love them. There was a new one that came out the other day, too. We didn't mention it on the show, and I can't remember what it was about off the top of my head. Unfortunately, they're still making them. There's a new one. There's one with Edwin A. Baker and Mary Ryder Hamilton. That was the one. It came out about a month ago. So please check those out if you have the opportunity. All right. Kits and Cubs, my little Easter egg. First of all, thank you to Kit Vim for compliments about the quality of my French. Thank you. A shout out specifically to Miss L and Miss A at the institution that Mr. Kit Hugh was speaking of to me yesterday. So hope you're all doing very well. And thank you for joining our show. The Easter egg I have for you is we've been talking a lot about women's sports because there's a new baseball league starting, a new Canadian soccer league, and the PWHL is starting its second season. The launch has been great. Lots of interest on the first weekend of May, and they're expanding. Well, in all of that, there was an announcement a while back that the WNBA was expanding and including a Toronto franchise. Well, the Toronto franchise came in its colors yesterday, and it will be called the Toronto Tempo. Cool. That's the name of the team. They say that it honors the heartbeat of competition and the unseen force that shapes the game. It was chosen after thousands of fans submitted ideas. Organizers wanted a name that reflected Canadian identity and worked both in English and French. Le Tempo. You can say that in French. Teresa Raj, president, she says, Tempo is about the game of basketball. It's rooted in the game, and we're so excited to bring that to life. It's not just about going fast and slow. It's about control and the energy and excitement. I can't wait for fans to take that and run with it. The logo is a stylized powder blue basketball with a T in the middle, and the team will begin playing in the 2026 WNBA season. Unfortunately for the team, the announcement was planned for sometime in 2025, but it had to be made early when the logo accidentally appeared on the WNBA's website. Oops. Oh well, got to adjust on the fly. But yes, that's sorry, not Teresa Rush, Teresa Resch, who is the president of Toronto Tempo. She says, as Canada's WNBA team, I know the Tempo will set our own pace, move at a championship cadence, and inspire people across this country. There were more than 10,000 people that weighed in on the Name Your Team engagement program by the Tempo of interest in the franchise, which is very, very exciting. So there you go, basketball fans, Toronto Tempo. That's who you will be cheering for. Not sure how long it will take for merchandise to get into the stores, but I'm sure that once it does, it is going to be a very good.
Oh, no doubt.
All right.
No doubt.
That's all I got.
Alrighty. Gotta go. I'll see you later.
Have a terrific day.